No matter whether a loyal African president was elected through an election or not, they are all standing openly with Ibrahim Traoré, pledging to do the same in their own countries. And the latest shockwaves have come from Botswana. It started with a speech from a place the West never expected, a country long praised for stability, diplomacy, and Western cooperation. Then came the sentence no one was ready for. Traoré wakes up, dreams it, makes it law, and I will do it. The room didn't breathe. The cameras kept rolling. And somewhere in Washington, a red flag was quietly raised. Because this wasn't just admiration. It wasn't just rhetoric. It was a signal. A signal that Africa's fault lines are shifting again, and this time, the cracks are forming in places no one predicted. But what exactly did Botswana's president say? Why did it send ripples through military intelligence circles? And is there really a growing alliance with Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Africa's most feared revolutionary? Rumors are now swirling of secret military pacts, whispered closures of foreign bases, and a Pan-African vision the West hoped would never reach this far south. So what is really happening in Botswana? Why is the US suddenly nervous? And what does this mean for the future of Africa's sovereignty? In this video, let's find out. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't merely assume power in Burkina Faso. He rewrote the rules of African leadership. He didn't wait for approval. He didn't follow precedent. He didn't ask for permission. In a continent where many heads of state remain trapped in colonial-era chains, dressed as cooperation agreements, Traoré broke free. He didn't just win a battle. He declared independence 2.0, not on paper, but in action. His first act was to expel French troops, ending decades of military presence, masquerading as peacekeeping, while quietly safeguarding foreign resource extraction. He then withdrew Burkina Faso from ECOWAS, an institution seen by many as a proxy tool for Western influence. He closed French military bases, kicked out NGOs who were interfering in internal matters, and reclaimed gold mines from foreign companies that had siphoned wealth for generations. Traoré made it clear, Burkina Faso would no longer serve as a client state, but it wasn't just about what he removed, it was about what he built. Traoré began laying the foundation for a new national economy, rooted in sovereignty, resource control, and agricultural revival. He declared war on neo-colonialism, not with bombs, but with policy. In doing so, he became something more dangerous than a soldier. He became an idea. And ideas, when they echo across borders, cannot be sanctioned or assassinated. Traoré's youth only sharpened the threat. At 36, he was younger than most of the heads of state attending UN summits or African Union sessions. He didn't inherit power from a political dynasty. He seized it with a mission to finish what Sankara started and what the West thought had died with him. For many African youths, disillusioned by old men in suits who chase loans instead of legacies, Traoré is a symbol of what leadership could be: unapologetic, grassroots, and unowned. And that's what makes him terrifying to Washington. Not his weapons, not his speeches, but his replication. Because Traoré isn't just acting alone anymore. He's triggering alignment. First Mali, then Niger, then Guinea. Now Botswana. What seemed unthinkable just a year ago is beginning to take shape. A continental realignment that no longer sees Brussels or Washington as the axis of policy. A Pan-African orbit forming around sovereignty, self-defense, and unity. And that's why every time Traoré speaks, it's not just Burkina Faso listening. It's a continent recalibrating. For decades, Botswana stood as the West's model African state, democratic, mineral-rich, cooperative. It embraced international institutions, upheld elections, maintained stability, and opened its economy to global partners. Western governments loved Botswana, not because it was powerful, but because it was predictable, polite, moderate, unthreatening. But 2024 changed the rhythm. Duma Boko, a seasoned opposition figure turned national leader, became the president. A man long seen as a voice of conscience in southern Africa, Boko brought with him not just political experience, but intellectual firepower and ideological clarity. While he did not campaign on radical change, it didn't take long before his speeches began sounding less like IMF reports and more like Pan-African manifestos. At first, it was subtle. He praised African innovation, he questioned debt dependency, he urged homegrown solutions. But then came the turning point, a televised statement that set social media ablaze and sent diplomatic cables buzzing. He mentioned Captain Ibrahim Traoré by name, and not in critique, not in caution, but in respect. Traoré wakes up, dreams it, makes it law, and I will do it too, he said, eyes fixed on the camera, voice determined. This wasn't admiration, it was an alignment. In one sentence, Boko signaled that he was not merely watching Traoré from a distance, he was preparing to follow his example. Not through chaos, but through bold, unapologetic policy rooted in African interests first. He spoke of subverting colonial frameworks, of rewriting the policy without foreign consultation, of acting on instinct, not instruction. For a Southern African leader, particularly one from a country so deeply entrenched in Western cooperation, this was seismic. Suddenly, Botswana was no longer the West's safe outpost. It had become a variable, a potential rebel, a question mark. And in geopolitics, question marks are more dangerous than enemies because they are unpredictable. While praising Ibrahim Traoré, Botswana's president vowed to do the same as Traoré did, but Traoré had kicked out Western troops. Did that mean Botswana had been courting Western troops for decades? The question struck a nerve because it dared to violate the illusion of transparency that defined so many U.S.-Africa military engagements. Within days, General Michael Langley, head of U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, scrambled to respond. His answer was vague. There is no base, only partnership. But in the world of geopolitics, that answer no longer satisfies. Because partnership, in modern military language, has become a smokescreen. Behind it lies a web of activities that look, sound, and function like an occupation, without the label. So what does partnership mean in real terms? It means joint training operations, often framed as capacity building, but designed to shape African military command structures in alignment with Western objectives. It means surveillance infrastructure, often handed over as aid, but conveniently positioned to monitor activity across borders, not just for African security, but for U.S. strategic advantage. Western partnership also means equipment transfers, including aircraft, drones, and encrypted communication tools, all controlled by U.S. advisors or contractors with oversight rights. And most critically, Western partnership means giving access to cooperative security locations, the unofficial bases that provide fuel, logistics, satellite coverage, and intelligence without the burden of public accountability. Botswana has quietly participated in all of the above. It has hosted U.S. military delegations. It has joined AFRICOM exercises. It has received defense equipment and digital systems. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. To this day, no public debate has ever been held about the long-term strategic impact of this growing military intimacy. In essence, Botswana is part of the American military architecture in Africa, but without the flagpole. And in this new age of African awakening, that isn't just uncomfortable, it's unsustainable. Now Boko's emerging alignment with Traoré's ideology, centered around non-alignment, military sovereignty, and anti-imperialist unity, introduces a profound threat to the model AFRICOM has spent the last 2 decades refining. Because if Botswana, a historically cooperative partner, begins to question whether these so-called partnerships are truly mutual, a chain reaction will begin all around Africa. What happens when a country starts asking for a list of foreign operatives stationed on its soil? What happens when a government demands access to the intelligence gathered with its own airspace and equipment? What happens when training agreements are suspended, not out of hostility, but out of principle? These aren't hypotheticals anymore. Boko's speech signaled a new political climate, one where rhetoric can quickly become review, and review can quickly become revocation. He asked bluntly, "What kind of freedom do we celebrate when our security is guided from outside? When our intelligence is shared with those who don't answer to us?" That wasn't an abstract complaint. That was an indictment. It challenged the very assumption that military cooperation with the West is inherently beneficial. It suggested that such cooperation may, in fact, be a soft form of domination, an outsourcing of sovereignty dressed up as friendship. And in this post-Traoré era, such charges are not just symbolic, they are actionable, because Africa is now led by men who don't just talk, they act, and when one acts, others follow. If Botswana begins to audit, restrict, or even terminate military agreements with AFRICOM, it won't just inconvenience the US, it will unravel the entire myth of friendly bases across the continent. Because it will reveal what many African thinkers have long suspected, that beneath the aid, the flags, the press conferences, and the handshakes lies a military apparatus designed not to protect Africa, but to monitor and manage it. And once that curtain is pulled back, it won't be just Botswana asking questions. Ghana will ask, Uganda will ask, Senegal will ask. South Africa might demand answers. And when that happens, the entire US military presence in Africa, spread across more than 29 known outposts, could face its greatest threat yet. Not rebellion, not violence, but rejection. And that's the quiet threat now unfolding in Western war rooms. Because once Africa stops confusing surveillance with support and training with trust, the military grip will loosen. And when that grip loosens, what was once sold as cooperation will be reinterpreted as quiet occupation. And when that narrative takes root, it won't just be a public relations crisis. It will be a full-blown strategic retreat. Because if even Botswana questions the arrangement, what country won't? And that's exactly why Washington is panicking. Because this isn't about Botswana alone. It's about precedent. For decades, the US has counted on a regional balance of loyalty. West Africa was volatile, sure. But Southern Africa? That was the buffer. Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, those were supposed to be the West's trusted partners, the clean-shaven gentlemen of the continent. Now, that confidence is collapsing. If Botswana begins to pull away, South Africa might no longer stay neutral. If Botswana questions US military cooperation, Namibia might start asking about AFRICOM's surveillance tech. If Botswana realigns with Pan-African ideals, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Mozambique may follow with bolder foreign policy choices. And suddenly, what was once considered an isolated Sahelian resistance becomes a continental wave, not led by war, but by will. You see, Washington isn't worried about one country renegotiating defense agreements. It's worried about Africa building its own defense doctrine, one that doesn't need external trainers, advisors, or security assistance packages attached to strings. A doctrine where Africans defend African resources with African-made strategies, not blueprints borrowed from Pentagon think tanks. This isn't fear of military loss. It's fear of irrelevance. Because when African leaders say, "We'll train our own soldiers, we'll build our own satellites, we'll guard our own gold," what they're really saying is, your era is over. And in Washington, that lands harder than any missile. Interestingly, this fear, this collapsing Western grip, didn't begin in Botswana. It began in Ouagadougou, where Traoré broke the mold. But now, it's reaching Gaborone, and that shift is not a fluke. It's a pattern. Across the continent, a new consciousness is blooming. And it's not happening behind diplomatic doors. It's happening in the open, on the streets, in parliament chambers, in classrooms, and in protest marches. The African youth are not asking for independence. They are demanding unfinished liberation. They look at their grandparents' revolutions and see incomplete freedom. Flags without control, constitutions without power, elections without sovereignty. And so, the call for full emancipation is not just cultural, it's becoming military and economic. That's why Traoré's name echoes not only in Burkina Faso, but in Johannesburg, Kampala, Nairobi, and now Gaborone. Botswana's shift is not isolated. It's the next phase in a continental awakening, where Burkina Faso took back its gold, Mali rejected colonial monetary policy, and Niger kicked out French and American forces. Botswana is now asking whether partnership has become synonymous with quiet occupation. What binds these movements is not ideology alone. It's a practical urgency. Africans are realizing that their minerals fund foreign stock markets, their data is surveilled by foreign tech firms, their debt is used as leverage, and their military training is a backdoor for regime control. And worst of all, their own governments often sign away sovereignty in the name of development. That's why the people are rallying behind leaders like Traoré and watching leaders like Boko with hope. Because the dream is now clear and shared. One currency, one defense force, one continental voice. No more begging, no more bases, no more betrayal. This is no longer just about policy, it's about identity. If Washington's panic represents the collapse of the old, then the quiet alignment between Traoré and Boko represents the birth of the new. When President Boko said, "I will do it," in reference to Traoré's model, he wasn't promising rebellion. He was promising recalibration. A new way of governing, where African needs come first, not last. Where the continent no longer serves as a testing ground for foreign policy, but as the command center of its own future. And the next step in that evolution is not symbolic. It is military. Because no revolution survives without defense. No vision stands without protection. No sovereignty lasts without the means to enforce it. That's why talk of a continental army is no longer utopian. It's urgent. Such an army wouldn't invade. It would defend Congo's coltan from plunder, Guinea's bauxite from theft, Burkina Faso's gold from sabotage, Botswana's diamonds from corporate capture. And more than that, it would deter. Because foreign powers only enter where there is division, and unity is the ultimate weapon. President Boko, by signaling his ideological alliance with Traoré, is laying a foundation for this future. He is challenging the legitimacy of imported security. He is saying what few before him have dared say out loud: Africa can defend itself. Africa can train itself. Africa doesn't need guardians. It needs guardianship of its own. This is why the West is uneasy. Because the shift isn't coming with coups or tanks, it's coming with confidence, with clarity, with leaders who aren't perfect, but who are present, and who are finally saying, enough. You see, this is no longer about one country. It's about a chain reaction. Botswana may not yet have expelled a single foreign troop, but its words were enough to send tremors through the walls of power. Because in the age of surveillance, speeches are seismic. In the age of information, a declaration is a detonation. And across the continent, those sparks are becoming fire. From Ouagadougou to Gaborone, from Bamako to Harare, from Kinshasa to Kigali, Africa is no longer waiting to be saved. It is saving itself. And in doing so, it is finally saying what should have been said long ago. We are not your base. We are not your data mine. We are not your experiment. We are not your pawn. We are Africa, and we are rising. What do you think? Should African leaders align with Ibrahim Traoré and reclaim sovereignty? Tell us, why are U.S. troops still stationed in Africa, but not African troops in the U.S.? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on whether African nations will be allowed to kick out Western military bases without so-called consequences. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, Stay tuned.